Okay, so here's the gist. I really wanted to make a combination of different styles of videos that I tend to make, but currently I'm having too much frustration trying to combine them into the same one and felt it would be a disservice to you. So here's what's gonna happen. You'll be getting this video, one where we just look at tendencies of players whose skills range from never or rarely touched the game before to has over 9,000 hours in the game. And then you get a video about where we talk about more metaphysical things. Also, only one person was close to guessing what these videos were going to be about, so kudos to you.
I wish I knew how to map read.
Some of you may know that something that I don't do very often is give context to what I'm doing. So I asked 6 of my friends to come over and play Realm on my computer without explaining why. The reason was because I was always curious on what skills people were developing as they were progressing further into the game. So here's what we did. We were able to pair into groups of 2. So we grouped 2 people who had very limited interactions with the game together, 2 people who could do cults and find things like NPC and O3 difficult, and 2 people who can do O3s and shatters but struggle from time to time. And then there's some nerd who has 9,000 hours. I don't know who is this guy. The people who have limited interactions with the game just did the tutorial dungeon, and everyone else did 1 cult with ranged classes, and then they had 10 minutes of random realm farming on a melee class. And since 2 of them from different groups were available for the next day, we just did the O3 event. Now that you know how we set it up, what do you think I noticed? The first group we look at is going to be the Inexperienced group who ran the tutorial dungeons. Something that was expected was that both of them would have lots of mechanical errors, so things that we do without thinking about them, like walking around, screen rotating, looking at your map, or even using your ability. What I did not expect was that walls could be so confusing, as evidenced by them walking into a wall and standing there for a moment. Both of the inexperienced people would constantly look down at the keyboard to make sure they were pressing the right things. As far as their eyes and attention goes, they looked at the character for the most part, only really looking away from the character when they needed to shoot at enemies, words that were on the floor, got lost and needed to look at the map for direction, or were confident where their character was, which is important to note. There was a moment where one of them glanced over towards their health when they were in danger, danger, but it was so quick that I couldn't determine whether it was intentional or not, but I think it's worth mentioning. So very early on, they were learning mechanics and things that were unique to Realm, which is a fantastic baseline to see how things would develop with time. Also, they were dropping good items because the tutorial told them to, but like, oh well. The second group we are going to look at are those who are fairly experienced and can do certain exaltation dungeons, but struggle on the higher end dungeons. Although no one in the group would be considered mid-game, we can still see how certain things have developed over time. The most important thing that I think that was developed between the 2 groups was the fact that they no longer had most of the mechanical issues, but other than that, it was the development of their eyes and attention. Eyes were used more for gathering information and focusing on important things such as shots that they knew could really hurt them, and they typically looked between the player and enemy in order to use peripheral vision. Once in a while, they would revert to the habit of looking at their character, and this typically did not end very well each time. This typically only really happens during more tense situations. Though I noticed a sort of hyper fixation on enemies and that they would once in a while walk into shots that were just on the floor. Though it was clear to me that they had developed their proprioception or awareness of self in order to not look at their character the whole time. One thing that I think is really worth noting is while one of them was playing Knight, they were actually looking at their mana to make sure they could keep stunning, which is something that I for some reason feel proud knowing. The third group is made of 2 people who have played this game for almost 10 years each. They are both mostly comfortable with things like O3 and shatters, though something worth mentioning is that these 2 don't screen rotate. Or if they do, they don't offset the camera to actually give you the benefit of screen rotation. Their eyes are almost always at the edge of the circle, and this is to see enemies really early, which they could see even earlier if they screen rotated. And one of them even compensated by looking at the map to see enemy patterns before actually getting there. Still, the group also looked at the character in stressful situations, which often ended up not being that great or an increase in chip damage. Although this group was most developed in terms of things that previous groups had developed and looked ahead the most and more often, they also took the most unintentional chip damage. But why? Does development of certain things lead to the deterioration of other things? The short answer is no. The long answer is definitely no. But if you want a more full answer, you'll just have to subscribe and wait for that metaphysical video to come out, because I'll definitely explain that more there. The last group is just me. I'm the nerd with over 9,000 hours. So as a recap, currently we have seen the development of basic mechanics, proprioception or awareness of self, and things like where you look, which includes sources of information. Along with the usage of more swap-outs and adding it to the list of things that I look at, I basically will do all of these things, but just fast. If you've watched my give up video, you will notice that this is the idea of pattern recognition at work, where my brain can recognize and respond to specific stimuli incredibly efficiently. Though this enables something else to be done: multitasking. Now, the idea of multitasking is not something that only I showed during this. Of course, everyone else displayed some level of it, but as thinking got faster, it also frees up brain power for doing other things too. A great place to see this is actually rushing lost halls. In order for rushing to go smoothly, you have to process a ton of information extremely fast, and in order to do that, you have to have solid fundamentals. Let's take an example of Celestial from different skill levels. From the group that struggles with O3, the eyes tend to stay on the character for the most part, sometimes looking ahead but no more than a few tiles. This is a very streamlined way of doing Celestial, where the player is very focused on exclusively survival. From the group that is comfortable in O3, the eyes also stayed pretty close to the character and was very survival focused as well. The cursor was pointed towards the middle for a little bit of chip damage, but the main goal was survival. But when you look at my Celestial, it just looks way different. I'm not only looking ahead for shots to survive, but I'm also shooting without even looking at them. Distinctly different than just pointing my cursor in the middle and hoping for the best. Being able to hone your fundamentals will get you far, but being able to master them will get you further. Like being able to do difficult content like rushing lost halls. And if you want to learn how to do that, you'll just have to wait a little bit longer, because that would be too much for this video. So you should go see if you're subscribed so you don't miss it, because like 80% of you aren't subscribed, and if we could just make that like 69 for no nefarious reasons, then that would be stellar. Speaking of stellar, thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. This video was only possible this early with your help, and also in hindsight, I probably should have gotten like maybe a camera or a capture card or something that was more useful than an eye tracker, but honestly, it is what it is. I'm just super excited about these two videos, and I'm sure it was worth it.